Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can bring the meeting to order. It's not on. You're saying it's on. Can you hear me now? No? Can you hear me now? It's starting a song.
I think some of the others are on, Chair.
Testing. Can you hear that? Slightly. It's a bit better, but can we go up a bit more? I'm going to, I think we're in. Right, good afternoon. Just so that you know, for rules of debate for this meeting, I am going to suggest that people remain seated so that the microphones hopefully will be able to pick up your voices. So we will, for this meeting, remain in seats. So we start with item 1, apologies for absence. I've had apologies from Councillors Dayton, Gomez-Rini, Hill, Rowe and Windley. Are there any other apologies? Councillor Kenyon. Councillor Foster and Drabble. Thank you. Foster and Drabble. Councillor Barker.
Ridgway. I think Councillor Ridgway.
Councillor Brian Ridgway. Thank you.
Not Brian.
Jackie Ridgway, just testing. Brian isn't on council anymore.
No, he can put his apologies in.
Any other apologies of names from the past? No. Thank you. So move to item 2 then, declarations of interest. Members are requested to declare the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interest and or other interests not already on their register of interest in any item on the agenda and withdraw from the meeting at the appropriate time. So just to start this off, I'm going to declare an interest item 12 as a Ricknold director. Councillor Welton.
Yes, I'd also like to declare the same and ask a question about whether, as a Ricknold director, I'll need to withdraw at the appropriate moment in the proceedings.
We need to withdraw as Ricknold. Yes, we do.
Okay.
Councillor Clough.
Thank you, Chair. Item 12, Ricknold Board.
Thank you. Councillor Ruff.
Item 12, Ricknold Board.
Thank you. Councillor Hall.
Agenda item 8, mandatory CCTV in taxis. I hold a taxi badge issued by a different council, so I'll withdraw from the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Thank you. Any others? We move to item 3, minutes of the last meeting. So the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of July 2021 have been circulated. So this is to approve them as a correct record. Do we have a proposer, please? Councillor Dale, seconded by Councillor Cupit. Councillor Barry.
Chair, can I come in on the minutes? At the end, it'd be nice to have the dates of future meetings. And I'm asking as to whether we can confirm that the meeting for the next full council is still going to be on the 29th of November and not going to be moved.
Yes, Chair, we can do that.
That's it. That's fine. So it has been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? No, that's carried. Thank you. Item 4, Chairman's announcements. Everyone here will be aware of the shocking news concerning the loss of life in Killamarsh recently. The tragic deaths of John Paul Bennett, aged 13, Lacey Bennett, aged 11, their mother, Terry Harris, and Lacey's friend, Connie Gent, aged 11, are difficult to comprehend. The thoughts of this council are with all those in Killamarsh and beyond who have been affected by what has happened, particularly with the families and friends of those who have died. I ask that you join with me in silent reflection to demonstrate solidarity with the community of Killamarsh. Thank you. It is also with sadness that I have to inform Council of the death of the former councillor for Ashover, Peter Ramshaw. Those of you on Council that remember Peter will know that he was a man with a great sense of humour, a man who was determined to do his best for the ward that he represented, but also somebody who stuck to his own opinions and made sure that he valued others but presented his views accordingly, a man of great intelligence and integrity. So please, again, a pause for reflection in remembrance of Peter Ramshaw, and that this council conveys its very best wishes to his family and friends. Thank you, colleagues. May I welcome to Council Councillor Bentley Strafford-Stevenson and Councillor Tony Lacey. Congratulations on your election success in the wards of Barlow and Holmesfield and Killamarsh East, respectively. Thank you to the councillors and officers who attended the civic service on the 26th of September. It was a wonderful occasion that showcased several representative groups from North East Derbyshire. I was especially pleased to see those from the deaf community who were able to access the service thanks to a BSL interpreter. It really was something special. The event on the 3rd of October, demonstrating the Council's commitment to the Armed Forces Covenant, was an opportunity to signal all we do for those linked to military service in some way. The Council has a positive record for supporting reservists, veterans, those who are serving and their families. I received a message last night from the Vice Lord Lieutenant of Derbyshire congratulating the Council on all it does for the serving community and their thanks to elected members and officers. Jean and I were invited to the inauguration of Peter Shellhass as Landrat of Darmstadt-Dieburg. It was 3 days of touring council facilities, a school, meetings with representative groups and civic engagements. The days of twinning as we once knew them are a thing of the past. It was agreed that our communities would explore a partnership to share ideas about economy, employment and training, develop education programs, and discuss approaches to climate change. And before anyone asks, Jean and I paid our own way, so council taxpayers didn't foot the bill. I am grateful to those who are supporting fundraising for my appeal for Ashgate Hospice Care. Since the last meeting of full council, there has been a cricket match brilliantly supported by staff from NEDDC and Ricknold Homes, an ABBA tribute night and tour of Tissington. People of Holymore Side also rallied to stage a fantastic community event that was heartwarming to say the least. My next event is this Friday evening. It'd be great to see you at my brass band concert, and you've all got a flyer on your tables, which promises to be an entertaining night. Thank you. Item 5, Leaders' Announcements. Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Chair. Is everyone able to hear me through the mic? Is that working? Over here.
Oh.
Hello, is that working? Brilliant. Thank you very much, Chair. Firstly, just to echo your words, Chair, in offering the condolences to the family, friends and all residents across Killamarsh. I laid flowers alongside Councillor Welton and Councillor Clough as Chair of Ricknold Board and Chair of Killamarsh Parish Council shortly after the events to pay our collective respects to the family and friends and loved ones. The Council and Ricknold are continuing to support the police with their investigations, and the village is still clearly coming to terms with what's happened, But I want all residents to know that we stand with you and we are here for you as a district council. Ricknold has already been supporting many of the neighbouring residents, but if there are any residents who still need to support, I urge them to get in touch with us, and we will obviously provide support that we can, or signpost for those who we can't. I also want to echo your warm words of welcome to Councillor Strafford-Stevenson and Councillor Lacey. Many congratulations to both of you, and we look forward to working with you moving forward. I want to touch briefly on the local plan. I'm sure many of you will be aware that the inspector's final report has now been received, and that our MP Lee Rowley has subsequently written to the Secretary of State to request that it is reviewed. We therefore have to allow that process to transpire before it can be brought before full council for a vote on the adoption. I'm not clear exactly when that will take place, but it's assumed that that will probably be at the next meeting in November. In terms of leisure, it's been an extremely busy past couple of months for the Leisure Service, with major refurbishment works taking place. At Eckington, we were successful in securing a £1 million grant from the government, which is helping us to make significant improvements, such as relining the pool, replacing the windows and doors, and installing air source heat pumps. It's helping us to achieve our climate change commitments, whilst also making the pool one of the most environmentally friendly and low carbon in the country. At Killamarsh, preliminary works are already taking place, with major works expected to commence imminently, which will realise the Council's £1.9 million investment in the facility, transforming its fortunes and helping to secure its future as a much-loved community hub for the village. And as we're all aware, the Claycross Town deal is progressing, as part of which we are still working on our plans for the redevelopment of Charlie Park Leisure Centre. The Council and Ricknold Homes are also working at speed to refurbish over 320 council properties across the district, having secured the £1.5 million Green Homes grant from the government. To this, we've added £8.5 million of our own funds, and the works include structural improvements, helping to prolong the life of some of our most at-risk, non-traditional construction properties, as well as the retrofitting of external wall insulation, which has multiple benefits, including making the properties warmer, bringing down the cost of energy bills for our tenants, and helping us to meet our climate change commitments. We're very grateful to the residents for bearing with us during any disruption caused by either the works at Eckington or Killamarsh Leisure Centres, as well as the Green Homes Grant works. Moving on to the Afghanistan situation, I think you'll all join me in saying how concerning and troubling it was to see what happened and what unfolded over the summer. The government were quite quick to request support from all councils in providing accommodation to meet the needs, in particular of interpreters who supported the British military during our occupation of the country. And the request from the government was a modest offer from every council. I believe they were working on the principle of every little helps. I'm pleased to inform members that we have therefore offered 2 3-bed properties in the first instance, and we are currently awaiting direction from the government about when and where the offer will be activated, and that offer is in line with other district councils. We're also liaising on behalf of residents about private rented offers, particularly those people who have generously come forward with their desire to support Afghan families at this time. I also want to reiterate the huge thank you to officers and members for supporting and helping to organise some recent events, including our Meet the Council event in Eckington last Monday. Now that the COVID restrictions have eased, it's been fantastic to get out into our communities and give residents the opportunity to learn more about the services that the District Council provides and hear from residents about their views on some of the key issues facing their communities. It's a key part of our commitment to be a listening council, and therefore it's the first of many to come, including a session tomorrow evening at Claycross. And finally, a big thank you to Councillor Thacker, and particularly the partnerships team, for all of their excellent organisation of our Armed Forces Covenant event yesterday, as you say, in Dromfield, which I think went tremendously well and really was enjoyed by all those who attended. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. So move to item 6, public participation. No questions have been submitted. So item 7, political balance and amendments to committees. I'm going to invite Nikki Calver, the governance manager, to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Can everyone hear me okay? Thank you. When the political balance of the council changes, such as after a by-election, council are required to consider the proportional balance as is recommended best fit. The changes offer only an alteration to the Standards Committee composition. It is on this proportionality that appointments to committees are made, and these are received to date and they're set out in the appendices to the report. Amendments and appointments can be moved by group leaders as required. Further, the current outside bodies list is attached to the report and can be amended verbally as members see fit. Through you, Chair, I'd be happy to help with any questions.
Any comments or questions? A question? So no comments or questions then, so we move to proposal. Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Chair. Can I move that we replace Councillor A. Platts with Councillor B. Strafford-Stevenson on growth scrutiny, and also to replace Councillor R. Welton with Councillor D. Drabble on organisation scrutiny. And then just on the outside bodies list, I think this change has already taken place, but I noticed it was out of date, which is to replace Councillor A. Hutchinson with myself, Councillor A. Dale, for Northwood Group Limited on the outside bodies list. And also I've noticed that the Groundwork Trust has now been dissolved, and so I think it needs to be removed from the outside bodies list. And I was going to suggest, speaking with Nikki outside of the meeting, that we do a bit of a review of the outside bodies list, because I'm conscious that there are probably some that are out of date as well, and we could probably refresh those. Thank you, Chair.
Do you have a seconder for those changes? Thank you, Councillor Cupit. So you've seen the recommendations at page 19. Do we have a mover for the recommendations? Councillor Dale, because they were about nominations for changes, so thank you. And a seconder for the recommendations are set out. Councillor Cupit, thank you. All in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? No, thank you, that's carried.
I'm sorry, Chair.
Councillor Lilly.
I'm really struggling to hear from microphones on the floor, so maybe we can do something about it. Otherwise, I might as well put my apologies in, because I can't hear. I can't take part.
I think it's difficult. I think, to be honest, Councillor Lilly, I don't think the acoustics in this room are good for anyone, and I don't think the microphones are working for most people here. So I wouldn't want you to feel that it's just for you. We're all struggling with it.
I'm trying to read lips as it stands at the moment. So, yeah, I mean, most of what Alex said, I didn't hear.
Right.
And it may come up in reference in other areas of the agenda, and basically I'm not in the know.
Is there any way that we could move the room that would best suit you, so you can see people's faces? You want to come up the front?
Well, not really, because, I mean, supposedly the mainstay of the meeting is yourself. I can hear you plain as day, but it's the microphones down here that I'm really struggling with. Even though I might hear the sound, it's distorted to such an extent.
No, I accept what you say. Is there anything from the technician's point of view we can do to improve this? No, that's not working even now. Right. Right. That's not a criticism, it's just this is the difficulty with modern technology, and this is not the right venue. It's like being back at school in an exam room, and it's bringing back awful memories for me.
Have we passed?
But I think, from an inclusion point of view, this is a nightmare. So apologies, Councillor Lilly. If you want to move to somewhere, you're welcome to join me. I know that's another nightmare for people, but you're welcome to join me here. So do you want to try it a bit longer?
I'll persevere with what I've got. I'll keep moving, adjusting these up and down. But forgive me if I come in at the wrong time with the wrong speech.
It's all right, no.
I've missed what's going on.
Well, I'm sorry that you're having this experience, and thank you for your patience. Thank you. So we're moving to item 8, which is about mandatory CCTV in taxis. So I'm going to ask the Council Solicitor and Deputy Monitoring Officer, Mr Kevin Shillitoe, to present the report, please.
Chair, I understand that Councillors Foster and Liggett are actually going to lead on this one. Chair, can you hear me? I understand that Councillors Foster and Liggett are going to present this report.
No, you're going to present the report, Mr Shillitoe. You're the officer, so could we ask you just to say a few words and then we'll open it up for elected members to speak.
I'm happy to introduce it, Chair. As several members on this council are already aware of, this matter has been before one of the scrutiny committees and licensing committee, and through a public consultation exercise. What we've ended up with is a policy for mandatory CCTV in taxis that reflects the government guidance that was introduced last year. Prior to that guidance, we had, from a legal point of view, such a policy would have been difficult to introduce and we had to maintain the status quo. But thankfully, with the government guidance coming into force, we've now been able to put together a policy that should act as a preventative measure from a community safety point of view. Chair, I'm not going to go through the report in detail, but if there are any questions...
I think, Mr Shillitoe, we really are struggling to hear you. I think the report has been circulated. I think the best thing to do is take some comments or questions. Are there any comments or questions? Councillor Shipman.
Thank you. Hello? Is that coming out? Yeah.
You're in.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, great policy, and it's a good job that we're adopting it, but one of my concerns is that taxi drivers can still go and get licensed in Chesterfield or Bolsover or Sheffield.
Apart from that, what we can do, and we made this point, this was brought up in licensing, and it's a very valid point, this was brought up and discussed in licensing, and what we said we'd do, we'd make it as public as possible, make sure that all our public knew in North East that when they were going to hire a taxi, that they would hire it from someone licensed in this area. It was also a concern when it came to losing lack of business for our taxi holders and that nobody renewed in this area. So all those things were brought up and discussed at length in licensing, and that's by all political groups. So you all had representation there. And you made the point, Councillor Shipman, it was brought up by Councillor Winley. She made exactly the same, and it was answered in licensing. So that's where it was discussed before it was brought here. So we did cover that point in full. Now, when it comes to this policy overall, it's all well and good making a song and dance about it now, but this was first recommended from a scrutiny committee in 2017 when I was in opposition. And I can see councillors nodding their heads to this, and I know our chair at the time, we put it forward. What happened is, these recommendations went through to the then cabinet, and they then didn't put them forward. They rejected the idea of mandatory CCTV. Now, it's all well and good now, it's on everybody's mind right now, because there's been events in the news this year when people have been at risk. No point shaking your head. It's been in the news when people have been at risk, and people have come under, vulnerable people, I'm not going to mention names, but throughout the country, where it could have helped them. It's all and good as making a song and dance about it now, but this should have happened back then. This should have been a step towards it back then. Absolutely, it should have been done in 2018. It would have been a courageous decision back then, and that's when it should have been. It was rejected by Cabinet then. No point shaking your head over there. So what I'm hoping that this time round, it was a recommendation and it's in the minutes. What I'm hoping that this time, the same people that voted against it last time and didn't want it to go through, actually see fit at this meeting to vote this through. This is an opportunity to vote this through now and make the people in our community much safer. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Liggett.
I'd also like to say I have actually spoken to local taxi drivers, and I was quite shocked by how much they were in favour of it, because they said it would also make their lives safer.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Dale?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Happy to second, assuming no one else already has. Just in answer to the point around other councils, it is a fair comment. Other councils haven't yet introduced this, and that will always be the case around licensing, that you know, as a taxi driver you are able to go to a different area to get your license and still operate across the country. But I think the key thing, and we all have a letter on our desks from the Police and Crime Commissioner congratulating us on taking this move. And the key thing is about urging fellow councils to follow suit. I think that's the, you know, it's right, it's not mandatory. Technically, there are some grounds within the guidance to allow councils not to do it, but I think it's incumbent upon us, if we all support this policy, to do what we can to help encourage other councils to follow suit. So that's certainly what I'll be doing, and following the lead from Councillor Foster, who has sent this letter to us all.
Thank you. Any others? You've spoken, Councillor Liggett, so that's it. Well, it's been proposed and seconded, so put it to the vote. All those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? And it's carried. Thank you. So we move to item 9, to answer any questions from members asked under Procedure Rule 9.2. We do have a question submitted by Councillor Hancock to Councillor Parkin. Over to you, please, Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Chair. And if I may also pass thanks from Councillor Ramshaw's family to yourself for your kind words earlier. Question to Councillor Parkin. We note the increased cost of taking recycling in-house, along with several internal restructures over the last 2 years, and the potential cost of taking on Kilmarsh Sports Centre. And I think it's fair to say that all members have significant concerns as to how the Council will balance its budget over the medium term. For the last couple of years, Council has been provided with reference to unidentified savings. Can Councillor Parkin provide us with a clear proposal as to how he intends to balance the medium-term financial plan?
Thank you, Councillor Parkin.
Just wait until I make sure we can hear. Thank you, Chair. So thank you for your question, Councillor Hancock. It's nice to be able to speak in council because I don't get very many questions, but in this case, I'll thank you for the question. It has unfortunate timing, but we'll come to that. So I'll be happy to provide you with a clear proposal, and that will of course be as part of the annual budget setting process. As colleagues will be aware, the budget cycle starts in September and concludes with a recommendation from Cabinet to Council to approve the budget each January. I will therefore reserve the right to provide the plan that Councillor Hancock has requested until that point. I will, however, give you some insight into some of the work that is currently being undertaken. Significant progress is being made with our growth agenda aimed at regenerating and bringing income into the district. Investment and assets forums have been established with work plans aimed at making our assets work.
We can't hear you, Councillor Parkin, at this side.
Oh, right.
I know, I've just said, can we just try again, Councillor
Sorry,
Parkin?
Councillor Lilly, I'll look at you so that...
No, we've got other councillors can't hear you.
Oh, right.
Just speak on.
Speak a bit closer to the mic.
Let's just see whether that's any better. Can we hear okay now on the left?
Is that better?
Transforming its fortunes and helping to secure its future as a much-loved community hub for the village. And as we're all aware, the Claycross Town deal is progressing, as part of which we are still working on our plans for the redevelopment of Charley Park Leisure Centre. The Council and Ricknold Homes are also working at speed to refurbish over 320 council properties across the district, having secured the £1.5 million Green Homes grant from the government. To this, we've added £8.5 million of our own funds, and the works include structural improvements, helping to prolong the life of some of our most at-risk, non-traditional construction properties, as well as the retrofitting of external wall insulation, which has multiple benefits, including making the properties warmer, bringing down the cost of energy bills for our tenants, and helping us to meet our climate change commitments. We're very grateful to the residents for bearing with us during any disruption caused by either the works at Eckington or Killamarsh Leisure Centres, as well as the Green Homes Grant works. Moving on to the Afghanistan situation, I think you'll all join me in saying how concerning and troubling it was to see what happened and what unfolded over the summer. The government were quite quick to request support from all councils in providing accommodation to meet the needs, in particular of interpreters who supported the British military during our occupation of the country. And the request from the government was a modest offer from every council. I believe they were working on the principle of every little helps. I'm pleased to inform members that we have therefore offered 2 3-bed properties in the first instance, and we are currently awaiting direction from the government about when and where the offer will be activated, and that offer is in line with other district councils. We're also liaising on behalf of residents about private rented offers, particularly those people who have generously come forward with their desire to support Afghan families at this time. I also want to reiterate the huge thank you to officers and members for supporting and helping to organise some recent events, including our Meet the Council event in Eckington last Monday. Now that the COVID restrictions have eased, it's been fantastic to get out into our communities and give residents the opportunity to learn more about the services that the District Council provides and hear from residents about their views on some of the key issues facing their communities. It's a key part of our commitment to be a listening council, and therefore it's the first of many to come, including a session tomorrow evening at Clay Cross. And finally, a big thank you to Councillor Thacker, and particularly the partnerships team, for all of their excellent organisation of our Armed Forces Covenant event yesterday, as you say, in Dromfield, which I think went tremendously well and really was enjoyed by all those who attended. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. So move to item 6, public participation. No questions have been submitted. So item 7, political balance and amendments to committees. I'm going to invite Nikki Calver, the governance manager, to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Can everyone hear me okay? Thank you. When the political balance of the council changes, such as after a by-election, council are required to consider the proportional balance as is recommended best fit. The changes offer only an alteration to the Standards Committee composition. It is on this proportionality that appointments to committees are made, and these are received to date and they're set out in the appendices to the report.
And historically, we have never failed to meet our savings target by the end of the year. And we intend to do the same this year. This is not to say that we're complacent. We are fully aware of the magnitude of the challenge facing us, and we'll all be working hard to address this. But I would like to point out a couple of challenges that we face in this task, more recent challenges. So fuel and utility costs are rising. I think we're all aware of that. We're perhaps also aware of availability issues. But particularly gas and petroleum fuel, very difficult at the moment. However, the second one I'd like to point out is the ongoing impact of COVID. The ongoing impact of COVID. It's having a detrimental impact on our ability to raise local taxation through business rates. Okay, so budgets are dependent upon central government settlements and other funding. We are expecting clarity on funding settlements from government in the near future. You can be sure that we will be encouraging our new Secretary of State to provide appropriate funding for the important work that councils do. So to conclude, I am fully aware of the challenges we face. I am optimistic of delivering another balanced budget to the Council in January.
Thank you. A supplementary question, Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Parkin. I'm not actually sure it answered, although apologies because I couldn't hear everything. I'm glad you're expecting clarity, so from central government, because that's kind of what I'm asking for you, from yourself as well. Can you give me assurance that when we have the budget delivered to us, that we won't have references to unidentified savings and that we will actually have detailed proposals in it covering every aspect?
Councillor Parkin.
Thank you for the supplementary question, Councillor Hancock. I can assure you that our budget papers will include all the necessary supporting materials as required by SIPFA. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So we move to item 10, to consider any motions from members under procedure rule number 10. We have two motions that have been submitted today. So the first one is from Councillor Shipman. Councillor Shipman.
Are we on? Is that coming out okay? Yep. So I've tried to put a bit of detail in this motion because members might not be familiar with the background of what's happening on Clay Lane and the subsequent events that have unfolded. I don't want this to be a debate about whether the planning application needs revoking or not. This is simply the only mechanism that's available to get that agenda item on the planning committee. I have spoke to officers and tried every other way of getting it there so it can be looked at independently by the planning committee and a decision can be made once both sides have heard all the information that's now available. Obviously, when it was first approved, there's been information that's come to light since then that's to do with the flooding team. Have asked for a series of different surveys to be done, etc. on the site, and we are where we are today, where nothing can be done in terms of planning enforcement, and this is the only available mechanism left to try and get that debate back on the planning committee. So I would like to move this motion in its entirety so it can be debated by the planning committee, and like I say, both sides of the arguments can be heard again.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Reader.
Yes, Chair, I'm going to fully second this motion. I want to sort of say right now that Clay Cross members are fully supportive of the people on Clay Lane. And in terms of district councillors, all of the district councillors have made their objections to that application going in the first instance. The parish council did the same, and we fully stand behind all of those residents that are raising the issues. So I fully support this motion, and I'm happy to second it, Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Cupid.
Is that any better? No, it doesn't sound. Is that any better now? Is that, yeah? Is that okay? I'll try and look down. So I completely appreciate and understand the concerns of local residents here and members, and I think this is an important opportunity today, and the first of many upcoming, to discuss these concerns and this situation and set the record straight on a few things. To get to the heart of what I think you're trying to do with this motion, whilst I appreciate you're asking for it to go to committee, to ask for the consideration of the revocation of permission on this site, I think that's premature. I have no issue with championing the revocation of an application if it's justified, as indeed I and my group have previously when a former Labour member progressed an application against officer recommendations in my ward and the previous administration weren't even willing to debate it. However, in this case, I think potential solutions are on the table and should be fully considered. On this note, I asked Councillor Shipman, what have you actually done to try and resolve residents' concerns here in terms of active actions? It's quite easy to put forward this motion to defer action and decision to this chamber and to the committee without consideration of the consequences of what you're proposing, and to use emotive language on social media and in the press. But what have you done to try and find a practical solution rather than grab the headlines? As Cabinet Member for Planning, I haven't had any direct contact from you to raise or discuss this issue, but it was raised with me by Lee Rowley MP on behalf of residents. As a result, over the last few months, Lee and I have had countless meetings with planning, legal and enforcement officers and the Flood Authority at the County Council to try and fully understand their comments and the issues, which has included escalating the issue to the head of the department and his relevant director, so all options could be reviewed. Severn Trent are also involved, as I understand some of the flooding concerns relate to drainage and sewage. Similarly, in line with the email that was sent to both of us and the local ward members on the 30th of July by the developer offering to discuss concerns and try to find a way forward, Lee and I have had several meetings with the developer, which has included their chief executive and chairman, to outline the concerns being raised by residents. Have you also done this? As a result of these meetings, and I think it would be fair to say some robust conversations on all sides, and I thank all those involved, I understand the developer has looked at ways to try and resolve the concerns, has recently hired an external consultant to do an additional in-depth assessment of the brook using data accepted and recognised by the EA and the LLFA, and an additional 100 metre cubed overflow water storage tank has now been proposed for the northwest corner. These were finalised last week and are now on the relevant application page. I openly admit I'm not a technical expert, but neither are you that I'm aware of, and so I think the right way forward is to await the Flood Authority's formal analysis and comments on this on the changes, and when they've reached a position, the Section 73 application, which is needed to vary the layout of the site, will already then go to Planning Committee, as it was already called in a long time ago by yourself. In advance of that, I understand both the developer and Flood Authority have also agreed to have a meeting with residents to have an open discussion on these new proposals. I view this approach as the best way forward. Beginning proceedings to revoke an application puts the process over to an inquiry, which has no guarantees either way, as we all know. In particular, given that this site was allocated in the local plan by the previous administration, a fact I know some Labour members seem to have forgotten, and that the developer seems willing to engage through the new mitigation measures proposed or similar, and in open discussions, they're willing to reach out their hand, a revocation and an inquiry would not be justified at the moment and could actually take the situation backwards. So to summarise, whilst I always keep the option on any development of modification or revocation on any application open, I cannot support this motion at the current time, as I believe there are other better ways to resolve residents' concerns, and I'd urge you to withdraw it. I think we should have the residents' meeting with the developer and the Flood Authority to discuss the new analysis and proposals, await the formal and independent technical view of the Flood Authority on the proposal of the additional tank in the northwest corner, and then the Planning Committee can debate and decide the Section 73 application on the basis of this, with everyone able to put forward their views at this point, as you've asked. I'm going to continue to go for action rather than words here to try and resolve this, and I hope you'll join me in that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Ruff.
Thank you. I don't know if you can hear me or not. Yep, okay. In response to the motion raised by Councillor Shipman regarding the development for Clay Lane, historically, as we've heard, this was included in the emerging local plan by the Labour group. The application for Clay Lane was heard by committee in March 2020. This was a lengthy meeting with arguments both for and against the development. After much debate and based on the evidence put before the committee, the application was given approval. Since then, we have all learnt that fresh issues had been identified. We have now heard from Councillor Cupid, working alongside our MP Lee Rowley and the developer, that an appropriate solution to address concerns regarding the potential flooding in principle have potentially been identified. I am happy that these further proposals will come to the committee for consideration in due course, and I will consider these at the time with an open mind. I would also like to take this opportunity to comment on the strong and potentially offensive public comments that you have made about the Council's enforcement officers and actions. As the motion before us even notes, the Council has taken enforcement action where relevant on other issues and continues to put a lot of effort into resolving any concerns. As elected members, we always have strong debate and hold one another to account. But we should do so with appropriate language, especially where our officers doing their jobs are concerned. I, for one, will not be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a quick one from me. I sat on the planning committee and Councillor Ruff is right as chair. It went on, and it was a very long meeting, and we discussed things at length, and I think we came to the right decision at the end of it. What I would like people to make clear is, for the people that are campaigning against it in their area, those Labour politicians, which are scribbling this down now, why don't you make it clear to the residents that you represent that you put it in the local plan originally? It was your administration that put this into the local plan. Thank you, Chair.
Any other comments? Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's perfectly honest to say I think this is becoming a little bit too political and a little bit too much about events. that the whole purpose of this motion and the reason why I'm seconding this, I mean, historically I've been an underwriter, I've done jury service twice, and I've sat on licensing committee as well as planning. When you're making an assessment, you can only do it with the information that you have. The key point, and no one is disputing, irrespective of whether they agree with it, the decision that was made or the process that went through at planning. The key thing here is that information came to light subsequent. Even the law was changed after 800 years on double jeopardy, that a jury would rehear a case if new evidence came to light. That is what this motion is asking for. That is what is being put before council, and if we are doing things appropriately to protect the public that we are there, this should be going back to planning committee for them to make a decision with all of the facts that they did not have at that point in time. That is why I'm supporting this, and that is why the motion is on the table.
Thank you. I'm glad you clarified that, because the seconder of the motion was Councillor Reader. Any other comments? If not, then the proposer to respond, Councillor Shipman.
Thank you, Chair. What's happened is what I didn't want to happen in this meeting. It's turned into a Punch and Judy show, and we're getting into the detail about how the decision was made. Nobody's questioning the fact that it went to planning, it was approved. That, we know that's happened, but like Councillor Hancock's just said, we have new evidence that's come to light, new concerns that have been raised by the local flood authority, and we need to make sure that both sides of the argument can be reheard with all the information, with all the information available. I think that that's only fair. I think, what message does it send to residents in North East Derbyshire if we won't even consider looking at new evidence? I think that that's a failure in the process if us on the council are not willing to send an issue back to the planning committee. Personally, I think it should automatically go back, like the double jeopardy case, when there's more information. I think it's serious. But I seriously think it needs to go to planning so it can be looked at independently rather than this Punch and Judy, you're to blame, you haven't done that, we've done that, we're the best, you're crap. I think we seriously need to just send it back and let the members of the planning committee look at it again with an independent mind, with the new information. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Shipman. So it has been proposed and seconded. All those in favour of the motion? All those against? Any abstentions? That's it, the vote has been cast, the motion has been lost. Move to the next motion submitted by Councillor Barker. Over to you, please, Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Chair. Am I on? I'm on. Thank you for that. Hopefully you've all got that motion in front of you. I will not read it out word for word, but I think just before I start, I'd like to praise the government and our council and the staff for during the pandemic, because I think, we hindsight, we could argue some different things, but I think overall, we've managed that pandemic really well, and obviously Jane's team and everything at the council to forward that. The introduction of the furlough scheme, the grants to councils and businesses, the stopping of evictions, and helping the homeless. We can't fault all that. And last but not least, the uplift to the £20 a week universal credit were a good thing. And whilst there was, and I think there is, an acceptance that most of these schemes can't go on forever, we believe the £20 uplift is different. I'm sure you've all seen or read about the difference the money has made to people's lives, and it don't feel right to me and to us now to take that away. So not only that, but the 40% of households, or so we're told, also work, so they're going to have to pay the increase in national insurance, what they call a double whammy, I think. And as you can see from the motion, we're also calling on the council, as you can see, to write to the councillor asking for the £20 uplift to be made permanent. Also, and I think this is something I've always been a concern of mine, this having to wait 5 weeks for a universal credit. And if you get in dire straits, you can have a loan that you've got to pay back. And I've never been comfortable with that, not comfortable with universal credit, to be honest. That needs a coat of looking at. But I think, to change that to loans rather than grants, I think that's a reasonable thing. And finally, the third bullet point, which is about working together. And I know there's been an hiccup with the links scheme and the other things, and I know the council does support other citizens' advice and things like that. But with that in mind, I'd just like to ask the council to have a look at that decision regarding the links. And I know there's an hiccup. I know there's been an hiccup there. So with all that in mind, I'd like to move the motion as printed in the papers. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder?
Yes, Chair. This is
Councillor Pickering.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear? I think this is a vitally important issue for our residents in North East Derbyshire, so I'm very happy to second this motion, and I'd like to reserve my right to reply.
Thank you. Any comments? Councillor Shipman.
Thank you, Chair. I absolutely support this motion. I think it's something that we need to support. There's a lot of people that are struggling at the minute. Like Councillor Barker said, it's a double whammy for a lot of them because they're also paying the increase in taxes that's been announced by the government. And I think that we need to keep this uplift. Otherwise, there's going to be more people going into poverty, and we're going to have to end up paying. We're going to end up having to pay it out twice again anyway. When they're collecting other benefits and they just can't support themselves. So I think we seriously need to write to the government and make our feelings heard.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Chair. Wait until am I on? Everyone hear me? Okay, brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. None of us here would argue that this has not been an extremely tough time for families across the district, and I think we can all accept that COVID has thrown up some tremendous challenges across society, and the impact on the economy and, more important, people's livelihoods has been very severe. And I also hope we can all agree that as a council we have done a lot to support our communities through the pandemic, including vulnerable households. So I hope that the sympathy and desire to which this administration holds for those who are struggling would not be in question. But nor can we forget or ignore the lengths that the government has gone to prop up the economy throughout the pandemic and to soften the blow to our most disadvantaged residents. And I'm pleased that Councillor Barker has acknowledged that. But I just want to talk for a few moments just to highlight the scale of the levels of support that have gone into the economy and into supporting people. Recent figures suggest that over the course of the pandemic, £350 billion was invested by the government to create, support and protect jobs and businesses, as well as a range of other measures to support wider society. The list was practically endless. There was nearly £70 billion spent on the furlough scheme, £25 billion spent on the self-employed income support scheme, £31 billion on the business interruption loan scheme. There was the COVID corporate finance facility, the local restrictions grant, additional restrictions grant, mandatory business grants that we distributed as a district council. There were the test and trace self-isolation grants, again, that we distributed to the council. A £47 billion bounce back loan scheme, a £500 million future fund, a £1.6 million kickstart scheme to create jobs for young people currently in receipt of universal credit, as well as a range of other schemes to support apprenticeships, traineeships, to give refunds of statutory sick pay for businesses, to relax annual leave. There was some targeted support to specific industries like culture and tourism, culture and the arts rather, £1.5 billion package there, a huge package of support to councils like our own, and that is just to name a few. There were further measures to help families and individuals directly, such as mortgage holidays, support for renters, support with energy bills, council tax hardship support, an additional £7.4 billion additional money went into the welfare system to support those on low incomes. And we also had an item that I know Councillor Barker will have discussed with me a number of times at the Viper meetings. We had over £300 million on the COVID winter and local grant scheme that you'll be aware the County Council used to support free school meal entitled families, as well as the £220 million holiday activities and food programme. And most recently, in the past few days, we've had the £500 million household support fund announced just last week and will be targeted at vulnerable households. I think when you really stop to think about it, the level of support the government have put in place to protect our economy, businesses and households is quite frankly astounding. And while entirely necessary during the pandemic, we do have to accept that almost all of this has come from borrowing, the cost of which will impact on the UK for generations to come. And we have to be extremely mindful of this when considering these issues. I, for one, am not content to continually pile more national debt on our children and grandchildren and constrain their opportunities to prosper. As a country, we continue to spend more on servicing the interest on our debts than we do on defence, public safety and order, transport, housing and environment, and a range of other forms of public spending. For me, this is simply not sustainable for the long term. The increase to universal credit was only announced as a temporary measure back in March 2020, and it was part of a wide range of packages of support that were put in place that I've already been through. And since then, the government has put in place all of the measures I've highlighted, and more recently, its multi-million-pound plan for jobs. Measures like the Kickstart programme have seen over 260,000 approved roles created from a range of different sectors for 16 to 24-year-olds on universal credit. More recently, the £2.5 billion Restart scheme will provide intensive support to over 1 million job seekers who have been out of work for over a year. I think when taken together with the continued efforts to support vulnerable households, including the very recent £500 million household support fund, we feel as a group that the government has adopted the right approach by focusing its efforts on those most in need and on creating jobs to elevate people out of hardship, particularly as we recover from the pandemic. And therefore, for the reasons given, we won't be supporting this motion. I would like to respond to the linked CVS issues, but I'll defer to a colleague to do that, given the time's now allowed.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Powell.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Just on the links comment, all I need to say about that is that when we were reviewing our annual contributions to various voluntary organisations, as we need to do to make sure the council has full value from it, we discussed and then published a spec, and for whatever reason, and I don't know why, links did not bother to apply. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Chair. I acknowledge what Councillor Dale has said, that when this was first introduced, we all knew it was a temporary measure. The reality is the world has moved on since then, and whilst he cites the government's accomplishments and how it's supported, we've also got to accept that inflation is now the highest that it's been since the 1970s. We're all paying a lot more for our shopping than we were when this was first introduced. I go back, actually, it was a gift. Councillor Parkin made reference earlier to fuel and utility costs. Again, they've gone up. They've increased that cap. People are paying more out. In all honesty, and I mean, I'm certainly not on universal credit kind of income, but I would be hurt by £20 a week less coming out of my money, when that could effectively be my week's shopping, which it is for a lot of these people. It's actually obscene to consider taking it away. I think it's also ironic that we're talking about debt, and I fully agree we've got to pay back what we borrow, but we're borrowing money to pay for a yacht, which again is lunacy. So, I mean, as with Ross, we'll fully be supporting this motion, and I think that taking money away from the hardest hit in our community, which this is, that's not the sign of a civilised society at all.
Thank you. Any others? Councillor Kenyon.
Hi, thank you.
Yes, I won't be supporting the motion. It seems to me it's too crude a mechanism, a flat £20. It was brought in an emergency situation as a means of providing immediate relief. And what I would say is that things such as increasing the minimum wage, and which we've been doing above inflation, and creating an environment where salaries are not undercut by cheap foreign labour is a better strategy to lift people out of the need. And as was mentioned earlier, many people on universal credit are actually working, and I think we need to focus our support on those who are the most needy and the most vulnerable. Thank you.
Are you wishing to speak, Councillor Cornwell? No, I just want, right. Any other comments? Councillor Pickering, would you like to exercise your right to reply?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we had an interesting list of expenditure that Councillor Dale provided us with. It's unfortunate that he didn't separate that out into the money that's spent actually to help people who are in need, and the amount of that money that was spent wasted lining people's pockets. Billions that were spent on a wasted and failed track and trace system, handing contracts out to friends who used to be landlords of the pubs we went into, and giving contracts to people who went to ex-nail bar and eyelash companies. There are still on Companies House. There's billions wasted. There were millions supporting people, billions wasted. And what we're talking about now is money that's going directly into people's pockets immediately, not as Councillor Kenyon suggests, that we wait another 12 months while we've come to some wonderful strategies that might be alternatives. People need money today. The temporary uplift that was announced last year at the start of the pandemic, we'll all be aware of now, has been winding down, and it'll finally come to an end at the end of this week. Withdrawing that £20 a week uplift will leave many people and families across North East Derbyshire facing an unprecedented squeeze on their household budgets. And for people that's getting a regular income, that's fine. But for people that have run out of money by Tuesday and aren't getting anything else to the end of the week, 20 quid is a lifesaver. It's not pocket money that we're talking about here. The government's withdrawing this lifeline just as the country and North East Derbyshire are facing significant cost of living crisis. The Joseph Rowntree Foundation has said that the government will be abandoning millions to hunger and hardship across the country by pushing ahead with this cut. The decision is set to plunge many people into poverty, and it shows a total disregard for the consequences. And we've heard that from some of the comments this afternoon from the other side of this chamber. This winter, people are facing an untenable combination of increases to the cost of food and energy. It's more than a triple whammy. They've got rising inflation, costs to food, costs to energy, the end of the furlough scheme, and an imminent hike to national insurance contributions. In addition to that, it also appears that according to a recent report, North East Derbyshire is going to be locked out of the levelling up funding as well. The government's prioritised 93 areas at level 1 to be given access to that levelling up funding. North East Derbyshire isn't one of them. And I hope our MPs pushing the government to reassess its criteria for different communities and to look more in depth rather than the wider affluent areas that hide the areas of deprivation within them. We need to fight for our residents. People go to the polls expecting that those elected will fight for their best interests. And I'm saying this afternoon, it's in the best interest of the people of North East Derbyshire that we try and prevent them from spiralling further down into deprivation. To do this, it needs empathy, understanding and compassion, something we've not heard much of this afternoon. And there is the adage that compassionate conservatism, as it's known, is a bit like a unicorn. Many people have heard of it, but nobody's actually seen it. And, Chair, I don't think we're going to see it again this afternoon, much to some people's shame. There's still time for a change of heart, however, and we need to take action now. It's the responsibility of all councillors to challenge this cruel and callous cut at this moment in time. It can be extended and planned for in a much better way than just cutting people off from a lifeline that they've had. That's where we are, Chair. I'm proud to second this motion, and I hope everybody votes for it this afternoon and looks into their heart to find the ability to do that.
Thank you, Councillor Pickering. So back to you, Councillor Barker, as the proposer. Your right of reply.
Thank you, Chair. Am I on? Oh, yeah. I think Steve's, well, he hasn't stole my thunder, very good. But I've put down here, sometimes in politics, you know, you get to a point where you have to consider why you're doing things, and things come home to roost, as they say, and I feel like this is one of them times. I do feel, like I said in my introduction, I don't think the Labour government would have done a lot different to the Conservative government during the pandemic. You know, we got to get through that. However, I think the difference now is starting to show itself, and the question is, who pays for it? I accept what you say, Alex, you know, it can't go on forever. We ain't got a bottomless pit, as they say. But do we ask those that's got the most, or do we ask those that's got the least to pay for it? And I know which side I'm on. And while most of what's been said, you know, there's not been a lot said actually from the other side, but it don't come as a surprise. And I appreciate that most of you have been instructed to vote against this. That's how this thing works. But I'd urge you to consider that decision again individually, like Steve just said. And I'm sure everyone in the room will have at least one family in their ward that will be affected by this decision. £20 a week's a lot of money when you ain't got a lot, and I think we should at least, and let's be honest, we're not asking a lot. It's not going to cost this council a penny. We're asking to write a letter to the Chancellor to consider a decision that we hope that ultimately will help the most vulnerable in our communities. That's what we're looking at. That's why it's here today. And I would really urge all of you to vote for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So we move to the vote on this motion.
Can I call for recorded vote, Chair?
Yeah, I'll second that. Yeah.
So we've had three people then indicate recorded vote: Councillor Pickering, Councillor Wright and Councillor Barker. So we will move to a recorded vote. So I'll be asking governance to take the roll in reverse order. So you'll be asked whether to vote for the motion, against, or abstain.
See me? Can everyone hear me? Yep. Right. Councillor P. Wright.
Against.
Councillor B. Wright.
For.
Councillor Winley.
It's not here, Chair.
Councillor Wheelhouse. Councillor Welton.
Against.
Councillor Thacker.
Pardon?
Councillor Thacker.
Against.
Councillor Tate. Councillor Stone.
For.
Councillor Strafford Stevenson.
Against.
Councillor Shipman.
For.
Councillor Ruff.
Against.
Councillor Rouse. Councillor Rowe.
Absent.
Absent. Councillor Rennick.
Against.
Councillor Reader.
For.
Councillor Powell.
Against.
Councillor Potts. Councillor Platts. That was against. Councillor Pickering.
For.
Councillor Parkin.
Against.
Councillor Morley. Councillor Lilly.
For.
Councillor Liggett.
Against.
Councillor Lewis.
Against.
Councillor Lacey.
For.
Councillor Kerry.
For.
Councillor Kenyon.
Against.
Councillor Jones. Councillor Hutchinson.
Against.
Councillor Holmes. Councillor Holmes here?
Yeah.
Councillor Holmes?
Was that 4? Yep. Councillor Hill? Is she here?
No.
No. Councillor Hartshorn?
For.
Councillor Hancock?
For.
Councillor Hall?
Against.
Councillor Gomez-Rini? Not here. Councillor Fennell?
For.
Councillor M. Foster? Councillor Emmons?
Against.
Councillor Elliott? Councillor Drabble? Not here. Councillor Dayton? Councillor Dale?
Against.
Councillor Cupit?
Again.
Councillor Cornwall? Councillor Cooper? Councillor Clough?
Against.
Councillor Birkin?
4.
Councillor Barry?
4.
Councillor Barker?
4.
Councillor Armitage?
Against.
Councillor Ancliffe?
Against.
Thank you. So the result is 21 votes for, 24 against, no abstentions. Therefore, the motion is lost. Move to item 11. I move that the public be excluded from the meeting during the discussion of the following item of business to avoid the disclosure to them of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 1, 2, 3 and 5, part 1 of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972, as amended by the Local Government Access to Information Variation Order 2006. Do we have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Rough. All those in favour? All those against? Carried. The public is excluded. Item 15. There's no other business apart from to say that I'm hoping governance will look at the way that we manage meetings in future and whether we can or cannot go back to Mill Lane. I'm sure most of us would like to. In the interests of inclusion and in the interests of democracy, we should not be meeting in sports halls with acoustic issues like this. So I'm sure governance should look at it. So thank you all for your attendance, and I declare the meeting closed.